This evening, we're going to be talking about savings. If you are trying to save, which is fairly difficult at times, especially in view of the fact that I see, according to the National Credit Regulator, that South Africans owe around about 1.2, hold on to your seat, trillion rand in debt. I don't even know how many noughts that is. I'm not even going to try and find out. Paul Barnard, Executive Financial Planner at Consolidated Financial Planning, is our guest in the studio this evening. Nice to have you back on Money Sense, Paul.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
We were talking about debt last time you were in the studio. Mm-hmm. Now we're going to talk about savings. That's a scary number, 1.2 trillion rands worth of debt flying around there in mortgages, secured credit, unsecured credit. Yeah. What is secured credit and what is unsecured credit?
Well, it's a big number. The majority of it is secured credit. And secured credit is something that if you don't pay back your debt, then the person who lent you the money will grab it back as quickly as possible. So they've secured their loan with an asset, whether it's a car.
Unsecured credit would be what then?
Credit cards, unsecured personal loans, and overdraft typically is unsecured. So unsecured debt is something where the bank is relying on charging a slightly higher interest rate because they haven't got the asset to recover, and they will then charge a high interest rate to cover their risk.
Why is it that we have started talking about savings and the first thing we talk about is debt? It's a fact of life, though, that it is difficult to save if you've got debt.
It's very difficult to save when you've got debt. And the enormity of the debt problem in South Africa, I think, all those zeros and all that big number that you had earlier. I think another statistic before we get into the savings, though, is that why South Africans are finding it so difficult to save is because so many South Africans are struggling to repay their debt. Of the 19 million odd people in South Africa, I'm not saying they're crazy people, I'm just saying that the approximately 19 million people in South Africa who are using credit, just about 8 million of those have got impaired credit records. They are 3 months or more in arrears. And if you're 3 months or more in arrears on your debt, you're struggling to repay your debt. So you are over indebted. So that's just under 50% of people using credit can't make their monthly installments at the end of the month. So how are they going to be able to save if they can't even repay their debt? So that's a fundamental problem in trying to save in this country.
But having said that, let's also look at the brighter side of it as well. If you do have debt, and you are managing to pay it off, you are in effect saving at the same time.
If you're just paying off the minimum installments, then you're literally servicing your debt, which is fantastic. Hats off to you. You're one of the few people who are managing your credit record exceptionally well, and you're not in arrears. So great stuff. You're just servicing your debt. If you manage to pay a little bit extra than the minimum installment, then let's call that saving. So even if you're not saving in a traditional savings account or a unit trust, we can go into various ways to save. But if you're not saving in a traditional form of saving and you're just putting a little bit extra into your debt, great, hats off to you, you are saving. And the way we can explain that is that if you've got a credit card, typically credit cards are charging 22% interest on the balance that you don't pay at the end of the month. And the minimum installment on a credit card is typically worked out at 5% of your outstanding balance. So if you're paying 5% of your outstanding balance each month, the amount that you haven't paid off is being charged interest at 22%. It'll take you literally 2 years to pay off your credit card, by the way. So go out for dinner, spend 500 Rand on a dinner party at a restaurant, and you put that on your credit card and pay off 5%, it's going to take you 2 years to pay off your dinner. So just think about that next time you put your dinner on your credit card.
Whip the credit card
taking
out.
2 years to pay it off. If you pay the minimum installment, pay a little bit more than your minimum installment. Maybe you can't afford to pay for your credit card in full, but pay 10% of your balance, even 7.5% of your balance. Every additional rand you put into your credit card is going to give you a saving of 22%. You're going to save yourself 22%. In other words, you're going to get a return on your investment of 22%. And that's a guaranteed after-tax return on investment.
There's not a heck of a lot of schemes that can offer you a guaranteed 22% return after tax.
There's a lot of schemes out there on the telegraph poles, but I wouldn't encourage them. But I would encourage people, though, to invest in that as a savings option. Yeah.
Okay, so if we're talking savings now, we've got to first address the debt issue.
Yeah. The high interest debt.
Yeah.
The high interest debt, the credit cards, the personal loans. Yeah.
Because as we've said, we've been told so many times on this show before, you have good debt and you have bad debt.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it's the high interest ones that is the bad debt.
It's typically the debt that you're getting in to fund your lifestyle that is the bad debt. You know, your lifestyle should really be funded with cash. You know, if you're buying clothes and entertaining and so on, you don't really want to use credit for that. So, you know, if you're buying a home, now that again is also a lifestyle asset, but that's a big asset that's going to appreciate in value. That's good debt. You're buying an asset that's going to appreciate in value. That's good debt. But using debt to buy something that's going to depreciate. In fact, it was wonderful. I was running a workshop a couple of months ago, and we're talking about the difference between appreciating assets and depreciating assets. And we're talking about buying clothes and so on credit. And one of the ladies said, well, I bought these shoes on credit. Is that an appreciating asset? I said, no, you haven't really been listening, have you? And she said, no, it is an appreciating asset because every time I put these shoes on, I look down and I say, I really appreciate those shoes.
yeah, different ways of looking at investments, I suppose.
Right,
yeah. Having said that, though, if you look at something like a motor vehicle,
right,
that depreciates the minute you drive it off the shop floor.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
But there are not a lot of people who can go in and say, I'll have one of those, please, and just slap down the cash.
So then it comes to wants and needs. So then you need a car. Mm-hmm. So you buy a car that's going to meet your needs. You want to buy the Golf GTI, but perhaps you need to buy the bottom of the range Golf rather than GTI. So needs and wants. Don't be tempted to buy more than you actually need when you're buying a car because it's not an appreciating asset. There's a lovely example that I read a few years ago.
No, but you see, I'm going to come back. I'm going to challenge you on that one.
Okay.
Because I'm going to use the story of the lady's shoes. I appreciate my car. I don't necessarily need it, but I appreciate it.
Right.
And I'm going to be using that excuse on my wife. I can tell you that much. Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, it was about 10 years ago. Where are we now? The 1990s. 20 years ago. When the banks everything was fantastic times, and bankers were being paid huge bonuses, and we suddenly saw all these sports cars parked in the garages, everybody buying new cars. Mm-hmm. And 20 years ago, a brand new Porsche would cost you about 400,000 Rand. Now the bonus that was paid, a lot of people buying fancy cars for the 400,000 Rand. Today, if that money, that 400,000 Rand had been invested in a unit trust or share investment, it would have been worth close to 9 million Rand today, whereas that Porsche, 400,000 Rand, you probably could sell it for 400,000 Rand in today's money. So it's all about buying appreciating assets.
And limiting your lifestyle.
And limiting, but not, we've got to enjoy our lives, but it's all about living within our means.
Yeah, but that's the problem. I think people aren't living within those means. They're living far beyond those means and expecting it all to just carry on.
There's a lovely saying about investing in lifestyle assets and lifetime assets in terms of investing for the long term, investing for your retirement. What you need to have at your disposal are lifetime assets, assets that are going to survive and are going to generate income for you over your entire lifetime. For example, your house that you live in or your car, they're not lifetime assets because you need them to maintain your lifestyle.
Okay, so that's your lifestyle.
So that's your lifestyle asset. A lifetime asset is over and above your house and your car. You've now invested in retirement investments, or you've invested in shares, unit trusts. Those are assets that are going to last you for your lifetime, and at some stage when you retire, you'll convert those into generating income for your golden years. And those are lifetime assets. So if you're looking at saving and looking at investing, invest in the lifetime assets rather than the life. And don't fool yourself and invest in lifestyle assets.
Okay, so we've got these lifestyle assets in our back pocket, which we want and we, in some cases, need.
Right.
And our target then is to pay off the debt that the lifestyle assets incur.
Correct. Spot
in
on.
our life. Once we've done that, or even better, while we're doing that, we've got to look at lifetime assets.
Yes.
Let's start looking at those now. Let's move away from debt. Let's move. July is savings month.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's look at savings.
Okay.
What are savings broadly?
Savings are money that you've managed to put away from your earnings and invested in an asset that is going to generate a return above inflation. So you're saving, and what you're doing is the money that you put away is growing in real terms. Now, a real growth is any growth over and above inflation. So we're looking at anything over 5%. So if you're saving in a traditional bank savings account and earning 2-3%,
you're not saving.
You're not saving. You're going backwards. You're not becoming more wealthy.
It's amazing how things have then, the wheel has turned, because, when I was a kid, my parents opened a savings account for me. Still remember it. The Grahamstown Building Society. And I used to wander in there with my 50 cents or R1, if I was really lucky, if I worked really hard during the months. My R1 note. I used to go up to the counter, and used to put it on the counter like this, look at the lady, and have our little book, and it'd be written in and stamped. And that was a savings account. That was a big thing to have.
But Jeremy, that's absolutely fine. As a child, that's actually fantastic what your parents did for you, because they were teaching you about the culture of savings. It might not have generated interest at that stage, but the important point at that age is to understand the concept of putting money away and saving it. There's this wonderful piggy bank that I've seen that comes out of the States, and it's divided into 4 sections, and it's designed for kids.
Right.
There's 4 sections. Each has got its own little slot. And it's the sections are save, spend, donate, and invest. And the idea is to teach the kids the concept of, okay, here's some money. Some of it you're going to save. Let's put some money away for saving up for that little purchase that you want to buy yourself a CD or something. All right? So that's a fairly short-term goal. Okay? Spend. All right, yes, take some of that money and just go and blow it. That's great. Donate. You can either put some money away for the community, or you can donate 67 minutes of your time, as we've just seen it on Mandela Day. The concept of putting back to the community, the donating, either can be in monetary terms or can be in your own time. And then investing, now that's a longer term concept. So you want to save up for, we're talking about, okay, you're now at primary school, we've got to start talking about your long-term education, whereas your parents are investing. But let's talk about that concept. So interesting, when we talk about saving, there's all sorts of elements of saving. There's the short-term savings, medium, and then there's long-term. But if you can teach those concepts as a kid, your parents did a fantastic job with your rand up at the Building Society.
I love that piggy bank. I love the idea of that piggy bank.